Hi, I'm Marjorie. A few months ago, I was invited to dinner at my parents' house and walked straight into a conversation about giving my home to my sister because she had a baby and I didn't. No warning, no shame, just a calm suggestion that I should disappear from something I built with my own hands. How do you respond when your family asks you to give up the one thing they never helped you earn? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever been asked to sacrifice in silence? I hadn't been back in a while. Not since the last time ended in a polite conversation that wasn't really a conversation at all. Just a slow burn of smiles that didn't mean much, followed by days of silence that meant everything. When I pulled into their driveway, the azalea bushes were blooming. Same as always. Same as when I was 13 and used to sit on the porch waiting for someone to ask how school went. They never did, but the flowers were reliable. The front door creaked open before I knocked. My mother stood there, her lipstick perfect, eyes scanning me like I was a delivery, not a daughter. She smiled. "You made it. Come in. Trisha's already here with the baby." And that was the tone for the entire visit, like I was arriving late to a life that no longer included me. In the living room, Trisha was glowing. New mom? Same sparkle. She looked up from her baby like she hadn't expected me, then offered a quick, distracted, "Hey." The baby was passed from lap to lap like a trophy, cooed at and adored. I sat at the edge of the couch where I used to curl up with library books. Now there were throw pillows with scripted words like grateful and gather. I wasn't sure who was supposed to feel those things anymore. Dinner was meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Comfort food I used to crave but now tasted like memory foam. My father cleared his throat halfway through the meal. I looked up, sensing something rehearsed. "You don't really need all that space, do you?" He said it like he was asking if I needed another scoop of potatoes. Across the table, my mother folded her napkins slowly. "A home like that, it's meant for a family. You know, Trisha's baby could really thrive there." I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. It never made it. Alex reached beneath the table and squeezed my knee, but I didn't move. I kept my face neutral, my voice quiet. No one's asked me what I want. No one responded. They returned to their plates like I hadn't spoken, like the words had dissolved somewhere between the rolls and the casserole dish. After dinner, I walked into the kitchen to help, out of habit. My mother joined me, rinsing plates like always. She looked down at my phone on the counter. A photo of the kitchen in my house was visible. Sunlight across white tile, a basil plant on the sill. "That kitchen of yours feels cold. Trisha would make it lively, you know?" I stared at her back. The same spine that used to bend over my fevers, my bruised knees. The same hands now scrubbing dishes that weren't hers. The same voice now suggesting I wasn't enough to fill my own home. I didn't answer. Because what do you say to someone who's handing your life away with a smile? I had built that house with my own hands. Every inch paid for with overtime hours, missed holidays, skipped vacations. But somehow, it was already slipping from me, as if I was only ever meant to hold it until someone more deserving came along. As we said our goodbyes, Lorraine pulled Alex into a hug that lasted just a beat too long. To me, she simply said, "You'll do the right thing. You always do." I watched them load into the car, heard the doors shut in perfect sync. Then the driveway lights blinked off behind their taillights as they disappeared down the street. I stood in the doorway, holding nothing. Not their praise, not their warmth, not even my place. I didn't know yet that this was just the beginning of being erased. Sunday mornings used to be my quiet space. The air always seemed softer, the silence more generous. I was outside, bare feet on the patio, gently loosening soil around the base of my lavender pot. It had overgrown its corner like it no longer knew its own limits. That's when I heard the knock. Firm, unfriendly. Two men stood at the gate, one holding a clipboard, the other with measuring tape slung over his shoulder. They wore company polos and polite, practiced smiles. "We're here to begin leveling the backyard," one said. "Trisha set it up. Said you'd be expecting us." I blinked. "My sister?" He showed me the text on his phone. My address, her name, her emoji-filled message. "They're cool, just go around back." I didn't remember breathing, but I must have because I finally managed, "You need to leave." They hesitated. One looked toward the yard like it was already his job site. I said leave. They left. I stood there, hand on the doorknob, feeling the heat rise up my neck like a slow boil. When did my home become a shared resource for their plans? I walked inside, didn't bother wiping the dirt from my feet. I called her. She picked up like she'd just finished a spa appointment. It's just a little landscaping, Mar. Don't overreact. I didn't say anything. You've been so tense lately, I thought I'd take something off your plate. You're welcome. It wasn't sarcasm. She meant it. Do not send anyone to my house again, I said slowly. A pause. You always make things so dramatic. It's not a federal offense to want my child to play in grass. Alex overheard enough to walk in. Want me to call her back? I shook my head. No, I want to see how far they think they can go. A few days later, I went to my parents' house. They'd called, saying my old sewing box was still in the guest room, and Trisha had been asking if she could take it. I hadn't touched it in years, but now it felt like a relic I wasn't ready to hand over. I walked in through the front door I used to slam during arguments, sneak through during curfews, lean against after school, waiting for nothing in particular. The foyer was freshly painted, the same rug, different frame wall, only there were no frames with me in them. Trisha's face smiled from every square inch. Her graduation, her baby's baptism, her wedding photo next to one of Mom and Dad clapping. But no Marjorie. I ran a hand along the shelf where my prom photo used to sit. Dustless, disappeared. I moved down the hallway to the guest room, pulled open the drawer under the nightstand. Empty. No sewing box, no old cards, no crumpled up notes I'd tucked into the sides like time capsules. It wasn't just my room that disappeared. It was like I'd never been here at all. On my way out, I bumped into my mother in the hallway. You should have called, she said. The house isn't what it used to be. I gave her a faint smile, not the polite kind, just the kind that says, I see what you're doing and I'm still standing here anyway. I didn't bother asking about the sewing box. I stepped into the sun, which somehow felt colder than the hallway I'd just left. I used to think home was a place. Turns out, it's just a permission slip, and mine had expired. It had rained the night before, just enough to leave the pavement damp and the air oddly metallic. I had planned to drop off a small gift for Trisha's baby. Not because I was asked, just because it felt like the right thing to do. A soft blue onesie folded with care, tucked into a recycled paper bag. Nothing fancy. I parked along the alley, near the side of the garage where I used to rollerblade in uneven circles. As I stepped out, something caught my eye near the trash bins. A black bag, torn open. Maybe by raccoons or just the weight of what it carried. A broken frame stuck out first, then another. I crouched down without thinking. My fingers brushed cracked glass, warped paper, the musty edge of something familiar. There I was, 8 years old, braces too big for my face, holding my science fair trophy. And again, prom night, in that navy dress Mom said made me look serious in a good way. The corner of one photo was curled, water-stained. My smile faded in the smudge. Some photos were missing, some were too painful. Apparently, I was both. I didn't take them with me. I didn't even touch the ones at the bottom of the pile. I stood slowly, brushed my knees, and walked back to the car without saying a word. That evening, while Alex stirred something on the stove, he said my name the way he does when he's hesitant. Gentle, measured. Did you know Trisha got married this weekend? I turned. He had his phone open, a Facebook post. Trisha in white, a garden ceremony, balloons shaped like hearts floating above champagne flutes. I hadn't been invited. No text, no email, no card slipped into a mailbox like an afterthought. Everyone was tagged. Lorraine, mid-dance with Trisha. Kenneth raising a toast with a proud grin I hadn't seen in years. Even distant cousins I didn't recognize had commented hearts and emojis. The caption read, "Surrounded by everyone who mattered." I didn't cry. I just closed the laptop and said, I guess that means I didn't. Alex opened his mouth, then closed it again. He reached for my hand, but I gently pulled away. If they wanted me there, I would have been there. I went out for a walk, the kind that doesn't have a direction, just a need. The trees along our street bent with wind, not breaking, just swaying in reluctant rhythm. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream, it just stays. Like a house key you no longer use, but still keep on your ring, just in case. When I came home, I didn't speak. I went upstairs, opened an old jewelry box, the one with the broken clasp. Inside was a dried corsage, white, now beige, from Trisha's 8th grade graduation. I had kept it, pressed it, thinking one day I'd show her, remind her. But some things you keep because they matter, and some things you throw away so you remember that they once did. I woke up to a text from a number I didn't save, but I knew the name. "Is this about you?" Attached was a screenshot of Trisha's latest Instagram story. Just a blurry kitchen photo, not mine. Hers, probably. But over it, the words, "Some people hoard what they don't need, just to feel like they've won." No tags, no names, but comments told the rest. A string of affirmations from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some people really need to let go. "So proud of you, T. You always rise above." She hadn't said my name, but she didn't have to. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just took a screenshot and saved it in a folder I'd recently titled, "Not Just in My Head." That night, as Alex cleaned up dinner and I folded laundry in the living room, he cleared his throat like someone about to read a verdict. "There's something I need to tell you." He reached for his phone and handed it over. A message from my mother, time-stamped 3 days ago. "You know your wife isn't being reasonable. Trisha has a baby. Marjorie has a grudge. I hope you're the voice of logic in that house." There it was, not a plea, not a request, a positioning. I stared at the screen, feeling my ribs tighten around something unspoken. Not only had they excluded me, erased me, repackaged me as an inconvenience, they were now outsourcing control. Not just of my home, of my marriage. Alex said nothing, just watched me with those quiet eyes that had always meant safety. He looked worried, maybe ashamed, maybe both. "I didn't reply," he said. I nodded. But the thing was, it wasn't about whether he had replied. It was about the fact that they'd felt entitled to ask. I stepped outside without a word. The wind was cooler than I expected. The maple tree in the yard rustled, its leaves clinging to late fall like it didn't know how to let go. I sat beneath it and let the silence wrap around me. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that holds its breath. There's a moment when silence becomes strategy, and another when it becomes surrender. I had lived too long confusing the two. When I came back in, Alex was waiting. "Next time they text you," I said, "don't answer. This isn't about fairness or logic, it's about control. And I'm not giving them any more of that." He nodded. Not a word. Just the kind of understanding that doesn't need to be spoken. I turned off my phone. Not because I was done, but because I was done letting them in without knocking. I thought ignoring them would stop the fire. Turns out it just gave them time to pour the gasoline. The subject line read, "From your mother." No salutation, no preview, just that, plain and pointed. I opened the email standing in the kitchen, the same place she once said felt cold. The same room where I'd pulled together countless quiet meals, where she once claimed a baby's giggle would bring warmth to the walls I had paid for. She wrote, "Marjorie, I hope you'll consider this with clarity. You don't have children. Trisha does. And a growing family needs space to grow. This isn't about fairness. It's about responsibility. Be the bigger person. You always have been." There was no malice in the wording. That was what made it worse. It wasn't designed to wound. It was designed to sound reasonable. As if handing over the home I built was the adult thing to do. I read it again, then again. The edges of my vision blurred, not from tears, but from the sharpness of insult wrapped in the silk of concern. Apparently, my ability to carry children determined whether my house was truly mine. 2 days later, a manila envelope arrived by certified mail. Alex signed for it, handed it to me without a word, and went back to finishing his toast. I knew by the weight of it. Legal paper, too heavy for kindness. Inside, a letter from my father, Kenneth. Polite legalese, masked in familial civility. They were requesting formal mediation. "Regarding family assets," the letter said. "Not your house, not our mistake. Family assets." As if my property had somehow become a shared memory, instead of something I had bought with my own hands. My own name on every dotted line. My hands trembled as I read it. Alex hovered nearby, then said what I had started thinking before the envelope ever touched the table. You should call Isla. I nodded slowly, the same way you do when you realize the storm isn't coming. It's already here. I placed the letter next to an old family photo that still sat on the bookshelf. 4 people frozen in a moment from 15 years ago. Only 3 of them had made it to today. The 4th was being legislated out. That night, I walked through the house like I was walking through a memory that had begun to rot from the edges. Every wall was mine. Every curtain I had hemmed myself. Every cabinet I had saved months to afford. And yet, they were now all up for discussion, pending review by the same people who had once called me daughter. I stood in the doorway of the guest room, the one they'd hinted should become a nursery. My mother's words circled back. A home like that is meant for a family. I whispered, no, not this time. I dialed Isla's number. She was young but sharp. She'd helped a friend of mine win back a property line when a neighbor claimed 6 inches of land with a fence. This wasn't 6 inches. This was my entire foundation. When she answered, her voice was calm. I need help, I said. There was a pause. Okay, what kind of help? I looked around my house, the house I bought, cleaned, painted, paid off. Not because I'm scared, I said, but because I'm done. The gloves were still off, but this time, mine weren't folded. They were laced. It started with a knock, not loud, not urgent, just enough to say, we belong here. I opened the door to find a young couple standing on my porch, both dressed in matching Patagonia fleeces and polite anticipation. Hi, the woman smiled. We're here to check out the backyard layout. Trisha said she'd meet us, but she told us you wouldn't mind if we took a quick look. It took me a few seconds too long to understand what she was saying. I'm sorry, what? The man stepped forward, trying to be helpful. She mentioned the house might be passed down, and we're part of a community housing initiative for new families, first-time buyers. She said this place was, well, pending. I didn't speak. I just looked at them like they were talking about a stranger's life. This is my home, I said quietly. They blinked. I took a small breath. And it's not pending anything, so I need you to leave. They apologized, stepping back, the woman glancing at her phone. As they turned, I caught the faint red glow of her camera still recording. She didn't seem happy, she whispered, not quietly enough. They left. I closed the door, but something in me stayed open, unguarded. That night, Alex slid his phone across the table. I think you need to see this. It was a TikTok video. Trisha, smiling, radiant, hair curled, her baby on her hip. Manifesting, she beamed at the camera. We're finally moving into my sister's place. Some people hold on to things they don't need, but we're all about family. The caption read, soon, this home will have the love it was built for. I didn't say anything. The comments flooded in. She's so graceful dealing with selfish people. Your sister sounds like a nightmare. You deserve the house. You've always been the strong one, Trisha. My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't need to be. They tagged me anyway. They didn't just try to take my home. They tried to take my story and rewrite it in public ink. I stood up from the couch and walked upstairs, each step deliberate. The walls around me weren't just paint and drywall. They were memory, effort, survival. I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out the deed, signed, stamped, sealed. Then I took a photo. The next morning I posted it on Instagram. The caption was simple, not for sale, not inherited, not surrendered, no hashtags, no comments, just truth. I blocked Trisha, turned off my phone, let the silence do what my voice never could. For the first time, I didn't cry. I planned. Later that evening, I sat down at my computer, opened a new document. Title, Legal Petition, Unlawful Claim of Property. If they wanted to play public, I'd show them what legal looks like. The courtroom smelled of paper and polished wood. Too clean for the kind of mess we were all sitting in. I sat beside Isla, hands in my lap, clutching the edge of my skirt like it could hold me together. She leaned over gently and said, Your mother's up next. Like she was warning me of a wave I couldn't stop, only brace for. Lorraine walked to the stand like she'd walked into a church, reverent, composed, ready to testify with grace and poison all at once. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and then she did, her version of it. Trisha is the more appropriate owner of the home, she said, her voice clear. She's a mother. She understands the needs of family. Marjorie has always struggled with connection. She isolates. She reacts emotionally. There have been concerns for years. She didn't raise her voice. She just erased me sentence by sentence. I didn't flinch, not on the outside. But inside, something cracked where my name used to live. She referenced nothing specific, just alluded to episodes and withdrawals, like I was a line item in a case study she never cared to read. I looked to Alex. He looked like he was holding his breath for both of us. When she stepped down, she passed close enough that I could smell the perfume she wore the night I graduated. Jasmine and something colder. I didn't speak. Then Trisha's lawyer stood. "We'd like to submit additional context regarding character," she said. Isla objected, firm and fast. The judge allowed a brief review. Trisha walked up slowly, a folder in hand. She didn't look at me. She opened it, pulled out a printed page, and placed it on the evidence screen. It was my handwriting. Sometimes I think if I just left, no one would even notice. I was 16 when I wrote that. It was from a journal I kept in a drawer that locked with a tiny gold key. One I had assumed was still lost. There was a quiet gasp in the courtroom. I didn't move. That sentence had been meant for no one. A whisper to a page because people didn't listen. Now it echoed through a room full of strangers. Isla leaned in close. "Do you want to request a recess?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "Let them finish." Outside, I sat on the courthouse steps, the stone cold even through the fabric of my dress. "They didn't just attack my finances," I told Isla. "They turned my feelings into weapons." She nodded slowly. "It's only betrayal if you thought they were on your side." I exhaled, not because I agreed, but because it was true. "I want to change the story," I said. "Then we do it tomorrow," she said. "We build." As I stood, Trisha brushed past me. "You started this," she hissed. "You better be ready for how it ends." I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I wasn't ready. But I wasn't alone anymore. The courtroom was so still it felt like we were holding a collective breath. The judge read from the file, his voice steady, deliberate. "A total of $120,000 awarded to Miss Marjorie Hale for emotional damages and unlawful interference with property." I didn't blink, didn't move, didn't feel anything that resembled victory. Isla reached for my shoulder. Just a light touch, not celebration, something closer to grief. Alex whispered, "It's over." But it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a burial. Justice didn't feel like a win. It felt like the final breath of a connection that had already died long ago. Outside, the wind was colder than it should have been for the season. I zipped up my coat and walked to the car without saying anything. I didn't want to look back. And yet I did. Just once. They were still sitting on the other side of the courtroom glass. Lorraine's face unreadable. Kenneth staring straight ahead. A week passed before anything else came. The envelope was thin, no handwriting, no weight. Typed. Formal. "You made your choice. This is ours. Consider this the last communication between us." Signed by Lorraine and Kenneth. No warmth, no hesitation, no trace of the woman who once read me bedtime stories or the man who showed me how to balance on a bike. I folded the letter once, precisely, and placed it in the back of a drawer I rarely opened, not to save it, but to bury it where it couldn't be seen, where it couldn't speak again. Later that evening, Alex walked in from the patio, his phone in his hand, his face tight. She messaged me. I didn't need to ask who. He handed me the screen. "She's alienated everyone. That's not a win. It's a warning. Just think about your future, Alex." I stared at the message, then tapped and deleted it. No words, no response. She still believed I could be removed from myself, like I was something borrowed, a temporary version of what she thought a sister should be. But I wasn't borrowed. I was built. Brick by brick, pain by pain, year by year. Later, when the house was quiet, I sat in the living room, where the morning light usually landed across the rug. I opened a blank journal, one I'd bought months ago but hadn't dared touch. I wrote the first line slowly. "I am not their legacy. I am what survived it." I closed the cover and placed it on the coffee table. I looked around at the house that almost wasn't mine anymore, and I will never apologize for saving myself. The morning light didn't feel brighter, but it did feel different. It came through the window without urgency, without the kind of sharpness that reminds you of what's missing. It just existed, like I did. Alex was already downstairs. He placed a mug of coffee on the table without asking how I slept. Not because he didn't care, but because he knew better than to ask when the answer didn't matter. The money had come through. The ruling was official. My parents were legally bound to stay away. It was done. But I didn't feel victorious. Sometimes winning means there's nothing left to lose. I spent the afternoon in the attic, sorting through boxes I hadn't touched since the first week I moved in. I didn't expect to find anything that mattered, but I found a photo. A baby photo. Me, cheeks round and fists curled, wrapped in a blanket with little stars on it. The edges were yellowed. There was a crease across my face. But I was smiling, big and unaware. I cleaned the frame and placed it in the hallway, just above the light switch. No announcement, no ceremony. That night, I lit a single candle beside it. Not to remember them, to remember me. They erased me from their wall, so I built a new one. A few days later, I met Isla for lunch at a corner diner with bad lighting and great pie. She handed me a small envelope, my copy of the final agreement. We didn't talk about the case. We talked about her dog, about her next case, about how tired she was. Before we parted, she asked, "Do you want to issue a statement? I can help you draft something." I shook my head. "Some endings don't need announcements," I said. "They just need to be lived." We paid the bill in silence. Later that evening, I signed one last paper, a donation to a local shelter for women needing legal help. I couldn't fix my mother, but maybe I could help someone else's daughter escape hers. Back home, I opened the drawer where I'd hidden their final letter. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Instead, I took out the only remaining family photo I hadn't thrown away. The four of us, long before things cracked. I slid a letter inside. One I wrote quietly, without rage, without any need for reply. It said, "I hope you're happy. I finally am." Some stories don't end with a bang. They end with a boundary. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you free. People will try to define your worth by your silence, your relationship status, your willingness to keep peace at your own expense. But peace built on erasure isn't peace. It's quiet suffering. And if you're standing at that same threshold, wondering whether you're allowed to say enough, let this be your permission. What would you do if your family crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? Would you fight? Would you forgive? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below, press 1 if this hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, that's okay too. Share why, and maybe we'll learn from each other. And if this story spoke to something deep inside you, don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this one. Because sometimes, healing starts with hearing that someone else made it through. And you can too.